All right, so good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jesse, and I am with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. For those joining us for the first time, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. And we are super excited for all our teachers and our speaker today because we are starting off our 2019-2020 season. So it's the first time for a lot of you. So welcome back if you're joining us again. Welcome for the first time if this is your first session with us. And we hope to have many more throughout the year. So right now we're joined by 6 classes from across North America. So I want to give them a chance to do a bit of a shout out. We've got Miss Lovins, grade 1-2s in Sherwood in Arkansas. Hi, guys.
Hi.
Hey. Hey. Oh, turn around, whatever you want to do, either way. We've got Mr. Tornberg's grade 5s in Fontana, California. Hi, guys.
Hi.
Hey. We've got Miss Clark's grade 3s in Vancouver, British Columbia. Let me just get their mic. There we go. Hey, guys. Hey, you guys are so high-pitched. I love it. Okay. We've got Miss Brady's grade 6s in Festus in Missouri. Hi, guys.
Hi.
Hey, welcome. All right. And then we've got Miss Waver joining us for online classroom kids from all over the world. So, Miss Waver, always nice to see you. Thanks so much for joining in.
Thank you. We've got students in Spain and Malaysia and Nashville, Tennessee, and I'm here in Bowling Green, Kentucky. So glad to be here. Thank you.
Outstanding. Thank you. And then last but not least, we've got Miss Helms and Miss Carton's grade 6s in Anchorage, Alaska. Welcome back, guys. Hey, guys. Hey, that is like the most colorful room ever. Way to go. All right. Of course, the reason you guys are all here today is for our speaker. So we are joined live in Vermont at the Vermont Institute of Natural Sciences. So there they work with birds. They do amazing work. We've done over 15 sessions with them, and their mission is to motivate individuals to care about the natural environment through their educational programs. They do fantastic work in avian wildlife rehabilitation too, and they've been doing so since 1972. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Anna and her colleague, who are going to blow our minds with all the cool stuff that they get to do with raptors. Thanks so much for joining us, ladies, and take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jesse. Well, hi, everyone. It's really nice to be here. My name is Anna, and this is my colleague, Taya. Hello. We are both environmental educators at the Vermont Institute of Natural Science, which means that our job mainly is to teach people about wildlife. And we do so using live animal ambassadors because we believe it's a little bit more powerful and a little bit more exciting for people to actually meet one of these animals up close, get to see how they move, get to see the things that they look at and pay attention to, the sounds that they make. That's more interesting than reading about it in a book. And so we have some live animal ambassadors here with us to show you today. The reason that they live with us is because they can't live in the wild for various reasons. Jesse did mention that we have a wildlife rehabilitation hospital at our nature center, which means that we take in and see injured and orphaned wild birds that are brought to us by members of the public in our area, right here in Vermont and New Hampshire. We see birds that were hit by cars, birds that flew into the side of a building, that may have been caught by an outdoor cat, and they need some pretty critical attention to get back out on their wings in the wild again. And so we try our best to do that. And obviously we want every single bird that we see to go back into the wild. That's where they're happiest and healthiest. That's where they can contribute to their ecosystem again. But it's not always possible. Sometimes these birds have very severe injuries. They may have broken a wing and that bone didn't set properly. And so they can't fly now. Or they may have hit their head really hard and they can't see out of one eye. There's all kinds of different things that can happen to a bird that would make it not that feasible for them to survive in the wild. And so at VINS, we give them kind of a second chance. We let them live here with us. They get 3 square meals a day and free healthcare and all lovely manner of things like that. And the price for that is that they help us do our education work. And in doing so, there's a lot of training involved. So I thought what would be most fun to talk about today would be the kind of training that we do with our birds, because it takes a lot to go from a wild bird. Think of an eagle perched on the tippy top of a tree that relies on eating salmon and building a nest with its partner to survive. To take that bird and make it comfortable enough to sit in a room next to a human being is a huge step. And so we work with our birds a lot, giving them training to help them be more comfortable in these kind of situations where they can be educators. Another type of training that we do is to help enrich their lives. We give them sometimes toys to play with, which might not look like toys to you. It might look like an egg carton or a paper towel tube. Interesting things that make them think about the stuff in their environment. Think about how they might have to forage for their food, to go places to find their food. And we enrich them behaviorally too, where we ask them to fly if they're capable of it. And so they use their muscles. They get exercise physically as well as mentally too. So we're going to meet two birds today, and we can go ahead and get our first bird ready and talk a little bit about what goes into this training, these individual birds and how they ended up here at VINS and what they're doing now. So Taya just went to get our first ambassador bird. He has lived with us at VINS for 7 years. We got him back in 2012, and back then he was just a fluffy, downy little marshmallow of a thing. So he was actually born in captivity. He was hatched out by his barn owl parents, but in a place where they were breeding barn owls to build up the wild population. We'll talk about why that might be necessary when we meet him. Now he's in a crate off to the side here, so I can't see him just yet. And that crate is to keep him calm. It's covered with a cloth, so it's totally dark in there. That's why we're not showing it to you. It wouldn't be all that interesting, but it mimics the cavity where these owls like to live. You guys know how you might get a cavity in your tooth? How, if you eat too much sugar, your tooth develops a hole inside of it. Well, trees get cavities too. They die, they rot, and there's a big hole inside of the dead tree. That's where owls typically like to build their nests. So his crate that Aurora is in right now is just like that comfortable, safe cavity. And so he would rather stay there for the moment than come on out. But we're using a little bit of food as bribery. Now, the way that we train our birds here at VINS uses something called positive reinforcement. And that means that every time the bird does something that we want them to do, they get a piece of food as a reward. So finally, we have Aurora here. And if you can see up close and personal, he's got a little piece of chicken hanging out of his mouth there. You can bring him closer to the screen if I'll take it. He's very curious about it. We're using our large smart TV screen today. So Jesse's face is huge, and that's what Aurora is looking at right now. So Aurora is as I mentioned, he's a barn owl, B-A-R-N, named for the farm building where these guys typically build their nests when they don't have a cavity to access. A barn loft, like a hay loft, has all the features that these guys need. It has a nice floor, it has 4 walls and a roof that protects them from the elements, and it also has a lot of food nearby because these guys are excellent mousers. They predominantly hunt small mice, meadow voles, moles, rodents that are around, and they like to hunt in open spaces like meadows. So this barn has a meadow around it that we call a farm field. That farm field is growing lots of grain like corn, soybeans, wheat, and that grain is attracting so many mice, hundreds or thousands of mice. A barn owl has an all-you-can-eat buffet by living in a barn and having access to that farm field that's right nearby. So that's why we call them barn owls, because they're typically hanging out near farms. And farmers knew that they are excellent pest control, that these animals, who can eat probably about 3 mice a day on average, Aurora might say, eat 6 mice on Tuesday. Ooh, that was a little much. He might eat 6 mice on Tuesday and 1 mouse on Wednesday and 4 on Thursday, but it'll average out to be about 3 mice a day. Imagine him eating 3 mice a day for a whole year. He would be eating over 1,000 mice in a year. And if he found a girlfriend, another barn owl to live with, she would need to eat 1,000 mice in a year. And if they decided to start a family together, the average clutch size of a barn owl is between 5 and 7 young. Let's say 7 young need to eat 7,000 mice in a year. So together, this one family of owls could devour over 10,000 small rodents in a single farm field in 1 year. That has a significant dent in the population. But imagine if someone who had a barn owl near their barn, but was kind of impatient about it, didn't expect that the barn owl would really be able to take care of this mouse problem, and they decided to add some rodent poison into the system. They put out rat poison to kill the mice. Well, it also kills the barn owls, unfortunately, if they eat a poisoned mouse. And it takes just 2 or 3 poisoned mice to kill a barn owl. If he's got to eat 1,000 mice in a year, just 2 or 3, that could be just 2 days that he goes through that. And so, unfortunately, barn owls have been in decline due to the use of chemicals for a really, really long time. Now, Aurora, as I mentioned, he was bred in captivity, and he was part of a conservation program, part of a program that aimed to help build the population of barn owls back up to what it used to be before people began using these chemical rodenticides. But that is kind of just a Band-Aid over the problem. You can put barn owls out into the ecosystem, but that's not going to solve the issue of people are still using the rodent poisons. And so that's Aurora's job. His role was to always be an educator and to help tell this story to loads of different classrooms full of people like you guys. He helps us encourage people to think about other ways that you can control pests that don't have such an impact on the ecosystem. So Aurora's training has been kind of different from the other birds that live here in bins because he was never wild. He was a bird that, as I mentioned, came to us when he was just a fluffy little marshmallow of a guy. He didn't have any flight feathers yet. He still would have been in the nest being cared for by his parents. And young birds, while they're being cared for by their parents, they take in a lot of information, and that's how they learn about their world. One big piece of information is, what am I? What species of bird am I? Or turtle, or squirrel, or whatever. And normally a barn owl would look up into the face of their barn owl parents and say, okay, I'm a barn owl. Great, that works for me. In the future in my life, I'm gonna look for a girlfriend who is a barn owl like me. Aurora, we actually imprinted him on humans because when he was a very young bird, he was raised by humans, he looked up into the face of a human being and he said, oh, okay, those are my parents. I guess that's what I am. I'm a human being. And so in the future, I will look for a girlfriend who looks just like me, a human being. And that would be a human being. So unfortunately, he is ill-equipped to go back into the wild because he thinks this way, but he's very good at being an educator because he has to meet human beings all the time. And we don't want him to be afraid of them. We want him to think, oh, this is just another sort of regular part of being what I am. And so he was imprinted on purpose in order to be a more comfortable education bird. If he was wild, he might absolutely freak out by meeting people because we, unfortunately, are their predators. They view us as something dangerous and something unsafe, but not so for Aurora. So a lot of the enrichment that we do with him involves him hanging out with his trainers, him getting out and standing on the glove, the way that Taya is holding him right now, and socializing because he likes to hang out with other barn owls. And he, during the springtime, which is barn owl breeding season, especially likes to hang out with other barn owls. So we are going to do some flights with our birds. So I'm going to have Taya take off our barn owl's leash right now so he can do some jumps back and forth between the gloves. But we'll talk about that positive reinforcement training I was alluding to before and how we convince our birds to do this behavior that they normally do in the wild, this flight. Because people often ask us, how did you teach that bird to fly? And I say, I didn't teach that bird how to fly. I don't know how to fly. What can I teach an owl about flying? Instead, what I can teach an owl about flying is the proper context in which to fly. I can teach them that if they move from one place to another, something good will happen. And the good thing that happens is they get a little treat. And I see that. That's a gooey gummy piece of raw chicken. So that's what Aurora knows is available to him if he steps onto a glove. So when we're starting out training a bird, we have them get them to a point where they're comfortable sitting on one glove, and then we'll convince them, we'll offer them to step onto another glove. He's backwards, so we'll have to train him. There we go. And you saw he lifted one foot, put it on the glove. He put the other foot on the glove, and then I gave him a reward for that. So now he knows, okay, if I do that behavior again, if I step back onto Taya's glove, aha, a little bit more enthusiastically, he is expecting to get that reward again. This is positive reinforcement, reinforcing that behavior with a positive thing. In his case, a little tidbit, a little treat. Think of that raw piece of chicken as some Skittles or some M&Ms, whatever your favorite candy is. For him, that's what he's getting out of this. So once we're convinced that he's relatively comfortable stepping back and forth between those two gloves, we'll make the distance a little bit longer. We'll ask him, okay, now you have to really jump between the two gloves to get that piece of food, get that exercise. So I'll raise my glove, let him know it's available to come over here. And he makes the hop. Increasing this distance between the two of us is really the least part of flying for him. It's convincing him that it's safe and also worth his while to do so. There we go. Because the whole reason why Aurora is doing this is because he gets food at the other end. And that's the principle of positive reinforcement. We don't actually punish our birds at all. Let's say your parents ask you to clean your room and you don't clean your room day after day after day. And they say, okay, you're not getting any dessert for the rest of the week. That's a punishment. They're taking away something good that you like. We actually don't do that at all with our birds because they really don't understand it. And it doesn't function to change their behavior. Instead, with birds like Aurora, if he's paying attention, hey, nope, he's too curious about our box turtle in the corner of the classroom. Give him a moment. Instead, if he's doing something that we don't want him to do, we ignore that behavior. We say, you're not going to get a piece of food for doing that, but I'm also not going to, I don't know, tickle you or whack you with a newspaper. I don't know what you would do to punish a bird even. And because these birds are wild animals at their heart, they're so tightly adapted around where's my next meal coming from? How am I going to get calories from that next turn around the corner? They don't want to do anything that doesn't immediately lead to them getting food. So he will probably stop doing that bad behavior that we don't want him to do if it doesn't lead to food. So we can use food as motivation for so many different things. For him sitting quietly on the glove, for him coming to a different glove, for him loading in and out of a crate, for having that crate move around. Let's say we put it in a van and we drive to a local school to do an outreach for them. All of these things we can use food as a motivator for. And I will say, because Nathan isn't here, Nathan is my colleague, that it is a little bit difficult to work with the owls. You might be thinking about this because they're nocturnal. It's daytime right now. I don't know about you guys in Alaska, probably morning, right? But it's 2 p.m. here in Vermont, and Aurora should be, by all rights, asleep. He's a nocturnal animal. And so he is a little bit less inclined than our hawks and our falcons to do a lot of the energetic work because his whole day-night cycle is reversed from ours. I find it pretty difficult to train the owls because of this whole scenario. But other trainers with different styles, different philosophies can work very, very well with the owls. So they have different personalities as well, for sure. So that is a little bit about Aurora. Again, he is 7 years old, and we hope he lives with us for another 7 years. They can live into their mid-teens in captivity, especially, but in the wild, they do face a lot of conservation challenges, primarily that rodenticide issue, where they accidentally eat poison mice. And so you tend not to see barn owls in the wild that are older than 5 or 6 years, which to me is a great shame. But we're very happy to have Aurora here with us, and he's been a great educator. He is just fascinated by the box turtle that lives in the corner of our classroom over here. You can see him moving his head around a little bit, trying to get a read on her, trying to say, okay, is that food over there? So we're going to put him back in his crate, say thank you to Aurora, and move on to talk about our next bird. The next bird that we're going to meet is not an owl. In fact, this bird is a very unique kind of raptor. The bird that we're going to meet next is renowned for being of the group of animals that is the fastest animals on Earth. So this guy's going to be much more energetic than our owl was, and he's probably going to do a lot more flights back and forth for us here. But he also might be a bit more vocal than the owl was. This bird, too, is imprinted, but he was imprinted accidentally. That's the reason why he was with us. We'll talk about that more in a moment. Once we meet little Westford, you might want to bring him all the way up to the camera. I think he'd be more comfortable with that. Because this guy is kind of tiny. Believe it or not, this is a bird of prey. Ooh. He's an American kestrel, which is a kind of a small falcon. Now they're found all throughout North America. Every one of you guys in this classroom here would be able to see these in the wild around where you live. The reason he's so noisy is because he is imprinted and he still thinks of himself as a little baby kestrel. He thinks that any one of us in this room right now might have a piece of food for him. As it turns out, I do. So we're going to do some flights back and forth with Westford here. Hopefully he'll calm down after he's got a few of those M&Ms in him. He too is getting little pieces of chicken. I wonder how that's showing up on the camera. So bad. All right. There we go. So as you can see, this guy right here, he flies much more quickly. He gets a lot more wing beats in. He's smaller overall, but also as a falcon, he's got a lot of wing beats. They're for building up and maintaining speed. Those pointed wings help him turn quickly on a dime, chasing after dragonfly or something like that. But these guys are also mounders. They also eat a lot of meadow voles, mice, moles, small songbirds, and things like that. They commonly sit on power lines, so you might be able to see them if you're driving past a meadow.
Anna, sorry to interrupt, Anna. It's just, sorry to stop you. It's getting a little, I don't know whether it's because you're competing with the kestrel, but it's harder to hear you than it was on the computer. Just wanted to let you know. Sorry about that. I don't know whether it's distance or what, but all good. You're doing great.
That's fine. I'm just gonna let you guys watch him do a couple more flights, so that hopefully he gets full up and he stops making so much noise. All right.
Do you guys ever just do this for fun for like hours on end? Because it looks amazing.
Right? It's fun.
Okay.
We don't do it for hours on end for sure because his stamina runs out pretty quickly, and we also run out of treats for him.
We'll donate treats. If the hang up is running out of treats, we will send you chicken.
Well, we get a lot of donations from local farmers, and that's how we feed a lot of our birds, of rabbits and chickens, ducks, and things like that. But Westford here, if he was quieter, you might also hear something else that Ken and I are doing while he is flying back and forth between us, which is every time he lands on my glove, I make a little clicking noise from the side of my mouth. I just go like that, like you would call a horse walk with you. And what that's called is a secondary reinforcer. Essentially what that does is it's kind of a substitute for the food. When he gets that food bit, that's the primary reinforcer. That's the thing he actually wants, and that's the thing that makes happy. This is food, and we all need food. The clicking noise immediately precedes the food, and the clicking noise says, you did the right thing. Now, you came and you landed on the glove. That right thing that you did is going to lead to a piece of food. So the click allows us to mark a behavior. Say, hey, you did the right thing right now. Give me 5 seconds while I get you a piece of food. Because he's such a fast-moving little bird, it can be really difficult to get him the reward in time.
Anna, sorry to interrupt. We just got a few classes saying they can't hear, and it is a little tricky. I don't know whether it's the camera or what, but you were fine earlier in the presentation. It's a little tricky now, so I just want to make sure. I'll let you know when you're really good. I don't know if it's distance to the camera or what.
We'll just do a couple more plays today. We'll go back to talking.
Yeah, like I can't even hear you now. I hear like a little tiny bit. Sorry.
It probably is the one. We'll do one more like that then. Here's a good one. All right. I'll go back to talking for a bit. And perhaps if Aurora is willing, we can bring him back out and he can just hang out in the background. Sorry about that. He
That's
is
okay.
a very baggy little guy. And the reason for that is because he is imprinted on humans. Now, Aurora wasn't doing that because it's not the right time of day for that kind of thing. But Westford thinks of himself as a tiny little human being, and so he thinks, I'm going to get food for making this begging call. Which, unfortunately, he's kind of right about that, because we were flying him and giving him those treats. Another big difference between Westford and Aurora is that Westford was imprinted on accident. We don't really know how it is that Westford grew up, but he was born in the wild to wild kestrel parents. And at some point in his young life, a human being picked him up and brought him home with them. And they tried to raise him as a pet. They tried to keep him in their home and treat him like a parakeet, per se. We don't know how this happened or how long he was in the care of a human being, but what happened was he became imprinted, just like Aurora did. Those humans finally realized that kestrels do not make good household pets. They are not potty trained. They have needle sharp talons. It's not like a parakeet that you want to sit on your finger. It's also, in the United States at least, illegal to keep them as pets. These wild birds are protected by law because we need them to be in the wild. That's where they're providing ecosystem services, helping us get rid of mouse populations and keep them from spreading disease. We need these birds in the wild, so you can't keep them in your house. But someone didn't realize that, and now we have Westford. Westford cannot be released into the wild for the same reason as Aurora, because he doesn't know how to fend for himself. He doesn't know what's a Cooper's hawk and what's a field mouse that he can eat. He also has a tiny little crush on one of our rehabilitators, a 6-foot-tall man named Bren. He doesn't look anything like a kestrel, but that's what Westford thinks that he should be looking for in a girlfriend. So he's ill-equipped to go out into the wild, and that's why he's here with us. And I do apologize about the noise. He sort of goes through cycles of being really, really noisy in programs and then nice and quiet. But I hope you guys got a good view of his flights when he was doing them. I know it can be hard to watch fast-moving things on a screen, but he can fly up to speeds of 70 miles an hour in a straight-on dive. So Westford's been with us about 2 years. He is fully grown. He's not getting any bigger than that. He only weighs about 100 grams or so. It's 4 ounces, about a stick of butter, a little less. So imagine a stick of butter speeding down the highway. That would be what Westford is in terms of weight and speed. That's what I got. I want to know if you guys have any questions for us. Taya is coaxing our barn owl back out. So if you have questions for him, he will be here to answer them as well.
Outstanding. Before we dive in, Anna, you were talking about something that I caught, not sure all the classes did, about secondary reinforcement with the clicking. Yes. And I want you to just repeat that because it was really cool.
Of course, yeah. So Westford was interrupting me when I was talking about secondary reinforcers, but the food bit that we had, that little tiny piece of chicken, this is the primary reinforcer. This is the thing that Westford really, really wants, and what's going to satisfy his hunger for it. A secondary reinforcer is something that's taught to an animal, but it's something that means the same thing. Like, let's say, the smell of brownies baking in the oven. The smell of brownies is not actually satisfying your hunger for brownies, but it's a thing that means brownies are on the way, and so it makes you feel good anyway. We teach our birds secondary reinforcers, the little click that you heard me do before, and that means the brownies, or the chicken, as it were, are on their way, that you've done the right behavior, and I'm marking it with that secondary reinforcer. But it's not the reinforcer itself. You have to wait until that is going to come. So that allows us to chain behaviors too. It allows us to say, you did the right thing, now do the next part, now do the next part, and the reward will come at the end. It's really convenient for fast little birds like Westford, who he thinks so much faster than we do, and we probably move just impossibly slow for him. We can mark that behavior and say, you did it, good. And now he's not so impatient for the reward. We use this with all of our birds. And actually, we just started doing it with some of them, and they've taken to it phenomenally. If you've heard of clicker training with a dog or with a horse, that's exactly what this is. And you can teach your cat to do pretty much anything with the right secondary reinforcer, with a clicker. So that's what that's all about.
Outstanding. Well, thank you so much, Anna. All right, let's dive in, guys. We're going to go through the classes one by one. So we're going to start with the back of kids' heads in Sherwood, Arkansas. Miss Lovin's class, if you guys want to ask a question, come on up.
Okay, so we have Kai. Kai, ask your question. You can ask it to the camera right here. About the diet of the birds.
What's the diet of the birds
While they're
while they're with them?
Yeah, great question.
The diet of the bird. So the barn owl really mostly eats small rodents. That is mice and voles and voles. But that doesn't mean that he wouldn't eat a snake if it was there in front of him, or he wouldn't eat a small bird like a sparrow. But that's really what they're built for, and what they're looking for is those little rodents. The kestrel is a bit more general in what he likes to eat. They too eat meadow voles and mice, but they also eat a lot of small birds, like sparrows, starlings, up to about the size of a mourning dove, which is like a smaller version of a pigeon. And they eat a lot of insects, grasshoppers, dragonflies, caterpillars, things like that. So it helps them to be really maneuverable. Those long pointed wings would help him catch up with a bird or with a dragonfly, whereas the owl is not really capable of that. Good
Excellent.
question.
Great answer. All right. Mr. Tornberg's class, if you guys have a question, come on up.
Hi, my name is Layla. My question is, how many raptor species is there?
Ooh, how many raptor species are there in the whole world?
Yeah.
Whole world. There are about 300 species of hawks and falcons and eagles. So we call those the diurnal raptors, the ones that hunt during the daytime, and a little over 200 species of the nocturnal raptors, the owls. So put it together is almost 600 species of raptors.
Wow. And how many do you guys have there at Vin's?
Ooh, that's a good question. We have about under 20, more than 15, but less than 20. I don't know the exact number.
All right. That's a great number. Thank you so much. All right. Miss Clark's class, if you guys have a question, come on up.
Hi there. Thanks so much for joining us. We don't have any questions, and we just want to let you appreciate you educating the public about how important raptors are.
Awesome.
And unfortunately, we need to sign off early today, so thank you again.
That's totally fine. Thanks so much, guys, for joining in. All right. Miss Brady's group, if you guys have a question, come on up.
I get to ask them when you stand at the front. We're coming.
Take your time.
Right there. Come here. Do your birds ever bite you?
Oh, good question. Do the birds ever bite us? Yes, only when we deserve it. And that is to say that for the most part, we don't handle the birds in a way that would make them want to bite us. But twice a year, they get their health checkups. They go to the veterinarian, and at that time, we have to restrain them. We have to kind of hold them down so that the vet can really examine them. And that's when we get bitten, because that's when they're really upset with us.
Yeah. Just like if you go to the dentist, you might want to bite them too. You shouldn't, but it happens sometimes. All right. So we're going to go to Ms. Wafer, who can pass along a couple questions, because again, there's so many students watching in on YouTube Live. So thank you guys for all the commentary throughout. But Ms. Wafer, if you want to pass along 2 questions, go for it.
Okay, great. And I was just going to say, I have 51 students in a virtual classroom on a second screen, if you see me looking. So Jojo is asking about how long do you train them? And Jojo's in 8th grade in China. How long do they train during a day or a week? A lot of our students are tennis players or ballet dancers, so they train many hours every day. So they're curious about how much it takes for the birds to train. And then Sky and Larissa, Sky's in Michigan, Larissa is in Jacksonville, Florida. They're wondering about the oldest and the youngest raptors that you have.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so to start off talking about the length of time it takes to train these birds, it depends on a lot of things. It depends on the bird themselves. their personality. It depends on the behavior that you're looking to train. If it's something really complicated, like doing a backflip, that's going to take a really long time. But training them to do something as simple as choose to step onto the glove from a perch, that could also take a really long time too, depending on the personality of the bird, and depending on the strategies that the trainer uses. So in terms of hours per day, it's generally not that, because these birds don't really want to pay attention for that long. They don't have that kind of patience, and they will get quickly frustrated and tired and bored and move on. So the training with our birds can take several weeks to a couple of months for simple behaviors, but oftentimes you're working on that behavior for 5 minutes twice a day. Yeah.
Okay. And then the second about the strongest, biggest, fastest,
So
wickedest.
the oldest and the youngest birds that we have at Vince right now, I love talking about her. The oldest bird that we have at Vince is our turkey vulture, Ogden. She is at least 38 years old. We don't know exactly how old she is. She came into captivity in 1981. So that means that she is 38 for sure, but she was an adult at the time. So we actually don't know how much older she was than that at that time.
Yeah.
So she's definitely elderly. If you look up online, what's the oldest turkey vulture in the wild that they've ever found? That bird was 16. So she is way far surpassed any of that. The youngest bird that we have, it's a really good question. Probably one of the fledglings in rehab. We've still got a couple of baby birds from the summertime, little robins that are probably just a month old or so, that will be released pretty soon, that lost their parents or their nest for whatever reason. Our youngest education bird is 2, I think. We don't have any real babies in the ed program.
Nice.
Yeah.
Great answer, guys. All right. We're going to go to Miss Carton's class up to Anchorage. You guys have a question? Come on up.
Go ahead and introduce yourself.
My name is Kawan, and what inspired you with the name Raptor, and why did you pick the song?
Why does what? What was that?
Pick the song. The girl.
Oh, why did they pick those 2 birds to show?
Thank you. Perfect.
Yes. So why did we pick these 2 birds to show today? Even though I'm regretting my decisions about the American we wanted to pick these 2 birds because I think the barn owl is the most interesting to talk about in terms of the conservation message. That it's something really easy for people in general to grasp, that this bird faces a very specific issue that's caused by humans, and it has a very specific solution that humans can choose to take to refrain from using rodent pesticides to help save the barn owls. He also is a good example of a bird that does the flights, does the hops back and forth between Taya and I, but somewhat reluctantly, somewhat slowly. If we tried to illustrate the training process, the hop from one glove to another with the kestrel, he would just be like, zoom, I'm done. I did it. I know how to do this. And it would be over too quickly. So he sort of slows everything down. The kestrel is a master of these flights. So I wanted to be able to show you a bird that really has this whole training process down. Unfortunately, he chose to be very vociferous today.
Quite all right. It was very cool hearing him. All right, let's dive back into the second round of questions, guys. Let's do it. There's been a student waiting really patiently in Mr. Tornberg's class. I'm going to go to him first. Go ahead, man.
Hello, my name is Andre, and what is the biggest raptor in the world?
Ooh, good question.
The biggest raptor, so the heaviest raptor in the world, the heaviest flying bird is actually a California condor, which some people consider them to not be a raptor because they're a vulture. So they don't hunt their prey, they scavenge for it, but they can weigh 30 pounds, which is amazing to me that something that weighs 30 pounds can fly. Among the eagles, I always get confused. Like here in North America, definitely the golden eagle. But if you go to South America, they have the harpy eagle there.
Yeah.
Harpy eagles are even bigger than golden eagles.
And then this is in terms of weight, but I want to stress to the classes too. Like if you guys you guys are probably about 5 feet tall. So these birds have wingspans that are quite a bit longer than you are tall, 7 to 10 feet in some cases, sometimes 11 for huge birds. So fantastic animals. All right, Miss Bridie's class is heading out. So we'll head to Miss Lovin's class, and then we'll wrap up after 2 more quick questions because I want to make sure everyone is in before we wrap up. Go for it, guys.
This is Brooklyn.
How long can they fly for?
How can they?
Like, how long do they fly for? Like, do they just
Yeah,
consider
yeah.
short distances, or do they fly long?
Yeah.
That's a really good question. So during migration, a lot of these birds migrate. The kestrel will fly to South America for the winter, even from all the way up here in Vermont. So they can fly several dozen miles in a day, but they do stop overnight. So they're not going to fly like for weeks without stopping. They probably spend 10 hours a day flying during that migration time period. When it's not migration, when they're just hanging out in their own territory, building a nest, looking for food in the winter, they probably don't fly all that much. They would hop from one tree to another and back again.
Awesome. All right. And then we'll take two more quick ones. We'll start with Miss Wafer. If you guys have another question, go for it.
Okay, great. Thank you. So Allie and Daniela have related questions. Allie's in New Jersey in 8th grade. Daniela's in Alexandria in 9th grade. So the question is, how often do you release the birds back into the wild? And how do you rehabilitate a hatchling without imprinting them?
Great questions.
Yeah. So the birds that we rehabilitate and release, of the birds that walk through our hospital doors, unfortunately, about half of them don't survive the first 24 hours. And that's really sad, but it's also not unexpected when you think about the injuries that they have. Someone that brought us a bird that was hit by a semi-truck, it's amazing often that they're alive when they arrive at our doorstep. So if a bird can survive that first 24 hours, we have more like an 80% release rate. 80% of those birds can go back into the wild. Of those that can't, we either find a home for them here with us or at another nature center somewhere else in the country, or in another country at times, in Canada as well. And then the hatchling question of how do you raise a baby bird without imprinting it? I will say that there's a good reason why wildlife rehabilitators are licensed to do the things that they do, and why an ordinary citizen is discouraged and from trying to do this, because there's a lot of steps that need to be taken. But the basic things are, we would wear masks around the birds, even something as simple as putting a bandana over your face. We don't talk around the baby birds. We also try to house them with members of their own species. If you get a little hatchling robin and we happened to get 2 other robins yesterday, we'll put them in together. If we don't have that situation, we might put a mirror in with the little nestling so he can at least look at a robin.
Outstanding. I'm really happy we got that question. All right, we're going to take one more from a class, then I'm going to wrap up with one after that, and then we'll go to Miss Curtin's class first. Go for it, guys.
Get it.
Nice shirt.
Hi, my name is Keely, and my question is, how many beats per
How many?
flaps per second does your fastest bird go?
Yeah.
And then the second part of that is,
How many birds do you have that are endangered?
Good question.
So you saw me on the first one. I don't know, Chad, do you know that? How many beats per second does? I would imagine it's the kestrel. So the kestrel is the one who flaps his wings the most often. But I don't think I know what number, how many times he flaps his wings per second. That's a really good one. And you guys need to do your research and get back to me on that.
All right. And then endangered species there?
Endangered species, there's actually only one raptor species that's listed in Vermont as endangered, and that is, ironically, the bald eagle, our national bird. We are the last state for which the bald eagle is on the state endangered species list. So hopefully after the bald eagle recovers in Vermont, then they'll be good to go all over the United States. I say it's kind of ironic that it's the bald eagle too, because Vermont is a landlocked state that's covered in green mountains. We don't have great habitat for bald eagles. There's kind of the Lake Champlain and then the Connecticut River Valley, but places like Alaska, Washington, Oregon, all the states down south have much better habitat for bald eagles. So it's not surprising that they are endangered here. We have a pair of bald eagles that live with us on site. They are a male and a female, and they're housed together. Every year, the female lays 1 not fertile egg, does not hatch, but she's very protective of it until she realizes that it's not going to hatch.
Outstanding. Well, Anna, this is great as always. Before we wrap up, I want to ask for kids that want to learn more about birds, if they want to go check out something in the wild, if they want to go to a resource online, where can we direct people so they can learn more about raptors, the work that you do, and beyond?
Oh, for sure. Yes. So if you're really interested in learning more about raptors, I would suggest looking at the website of the Peregrine Fund, which is a group of people who do raptor conservation. They're located in Boise, Idaho right now. The peregrinefund.org is a website that has information about all manner of different raptor species across the world and the conservation efforts that are going on behind them. Birds generally, I always go to allaboutbirds.org, which is the Cornell Lab of Ornithology's website that will tell you about chickadees and cardinals and whatever kind of bird you want to learn about. And the other thing that you can do is get involved with a local birding society, get involved with a local Audubon society, meet other people that are interested in birds and learn from them.
Marvelous. And I'll pass along all that information to classes right at the end. Well, Anna, this is great. As you know, at the end, what we always do is I'm going to demute everyone's microphone. So Miss Lovin's class, Mr. Tornberg's class, Miss Curtin's class, Miss Wafer, you can yell if you want to. If everyone wants to join me in saying a big thank you to the team there at Vermont Institute.
And y'all can look at
Awesome, guys. Thank you so much for joining in, guys. We hope to have you back really soon. We just released our first.
On this side.
Hey, we just released our first newsletter for October, so you can check out all sorts of great things coming up soon. Miss Curtin, I'll stick around so you can take a picture as you always do. But yeah, thanks so much, everyone, and have a wonderful rest of your day. We'll stop the live stream.